The watering hole is a unique space. I don't know of another one like it in South Carolina, where we build Harlem Renaissance spaces in the new contemporary South centered on education. Our educational tenets are centered on educating poets or the general community about poets of color, particularly from the South. I'm from South Carolina, born and raised, and I grew up here never having met a writer. I know there are programs in schools somewhere where writers come and visit, and I've seen this as an adult, but I went to good schools, but I still had grown up wanting to be a writer. I published my first poem in 3rd grade. That was after my first novel failed, and in my eyes, but I didn't know where to go to meet a writer. And part of our impulse is bringing these resources not only to kids, but also to adults. So I'm thinking about my grandmother who, before she passed, wrote a book. Wouldn't it have been nice for her to meet a writer or attend a reading? And she was a voracious reader. So we try to bring these readings to populated areas, but also to rural areas. Our last rural reading was in McCormick, South Carolina. And we're trying to meet people where they are, people who may have an interest in enjoying literary arts, whether as a child or as an adult. Because these resources, we have writers here. We have to learn how to promote them as a state and as an organization. New York can't be everywhere, LA can't be everywhere, and all those resources, whatever you want, you can find it there. We can build the same things here.
I try to take what's happening right now in current events, and I'm also a huge hip hop head. I study the history of hip hop. So I try to take classrooms and get the children to talk about what's happening today in the way that original lyricists in hip hop did that through art. I try to talk and speak with children about taking things like, let's say simply, our current president. Sometimes I want to educate them, to challenge them to talk about him in a loving way, because he's a person, right, at the end of the day. So to challenge children to see both sides of everything that's happening in the world is one of the tenets of what I teach when I'm in my workshops. To talk about what's happening now, let's get it all the way out. Now, let me twist it a little bit and give you a form to write in, or give you a prompt that talks about it from the opposite side so that you can see things from both ways. We actually have a K-12 program that works in that way too. I had this idea to create in a classroom a 10-week workshop that actually takes the rules and the tenets of debate and make children follow those rules, but use them in creating poetry, so that instead of a debate competition, there be a slam, but it uses the rules of debate. In this way, we talk about teaching children to not only be able to study what's going on today, to research it, to write a paper on it, to then turn that paper that you wrote into some sort of art form, in prose or in any other art form when it comes to poetry, free write, whatever. But take it and make it an artistic form, this paper that you wrote, on your stand, whether you are for or opposed, and then compete the way that we do in SLAM. On June 18th to the 29th, we have a camp. It's called Love in the Arts, and it is us in collaboration with a local theater company called the Nia Theater Company. What we are teaching is not only creative writing, poetry, we're also teaching stage direction, voice and diction, improv. We're showing the children how to fall in love with the arts from every aspect, from the creative part, from you creating your own piece to present, all the way to just maybe dramatically reading someone else's work. So what Darian McLeod and the Nia Company are going to do is come in and show the children some stage direction and different tenets of theater, and they're going to have a dramatic reading at the end of the camp. And what we are going to do, what the Watering Hole is going to do, is do some workshops on creative writing, help them create some poems and things like that. We also have some guest artists coming in, because if you are a visual artist, there's no reason why you shouldn't be a part of our end of the camp celebration. And at the end of the camp, we're going to do on the 29th at 6 o'clock, we're going to show the parents what we've created. It's going to be a beautiful thing. It's always beginners welcome. My favorite thing to do is to walk into a workshop with teens and have half of them raise their hand and say they're not a poet. The last time that happened, everyone got in line at the end when we had the open mic at the end of the workshop. What you'll find is that it's not that intimidating. To say you're a poet sometimes sounds really big, and sometimes in our professional lives, it's hard for us to say, I'm a poet, and that's it. Because somebody will always say, no, what do you really do? You know, I'm a poet, that's it. And so with kids, I find that when you're doing a workshop and it's about them just expressing themselves, they find the poet inside themselves. And they may not get up and perform it for you, but they found an avenue now, you know? And so if your intention is only to get someone to appreciate art, right? And not necessarily have to sign up, you know, get a membership card for a poet society, but just to appreciate art, if that is your intention, then they'll all feel welcome. Because all you have to do is just understand it now. You don't necessarily have to write me a poem, though I'd want you to, you know? And at the end, everybody does anyway. We're a vanguard whose core purpose is to build Harlem Renaissance spaces in the new contemporary South and cultivate tribe everywhere we go. When we come together as a village, we build poets of color from the ground up and help them reach their best work. So our adult programming is for Southern poets of color because historically, Southern poets of color have not been able to access the same level of continuing education as other colors and creeds. And so what we say is, if you are a poet of color, you come down to the South, we charge a fraction of what it costs to go to different fellowships and workshops and residencies in the country. And we also ask the facilitators to come in at a discounted rate as well to economically meet the needs of Southern poets of color to reach like an MFA level type training with our facilitators. So that's what we do for adults. For the community, we do all colors, all creeds, all races, all everybody.